you so much for joining me on my very first episode of Still Positive, a podcast where I talk to people who are affected by chronic illness and or disabilities. I wanted to kick off the show with someone who is closest to me, my very own flesh and blood, Lauren Hannon, to tell you a little bit more about how her life was affected by having chronic illness in her life, but not being directly affected by it. So, having a chronic illness or disability, obviously, you're the person that's most affected by the thing that you're going through. But it also affects family members, partners, caregivers, all the different people that are in your circle. And so, I wanted to share their experience as well. So, Lauren is an associate director of global supply chain and distribution at Fresh Beauty, and also my sister. She has been my life support since I can remember and continues to show up for me every damn day. Sick, happy, sad, whatever. She's there. She's my number one go to. So, this is my sister's story of living affected by chronic illness. Enjoy. I'm Dayna Murray, and this is Still Positive. Let's be real, people love to gloss over chronic conditions or disabilities with a fleeting comment like, just be positive, or a fleeting insult like, kale will cure you. This is a podcast for when you face a different reality, knowing that positivity isn't a magic wand that's going to cure everything, but a flashlight in the dark that we may or may not have batteries to. Living with a chronic illness or disability makes you feel different, and your difference could be noticeable to others or not, but either can sometimes make you feel invisible. I'm here to tell you that your experience is valid and shared by others in the dark. Positivity is not the missing puzzle piece that's going to solve your life's puzzle, but it can be a beautiful tool that can help you grow, and sharing those experiences can make us grow together.
Here we are.
I'm, first of all, going to talk about the fact that Kim Kardashian's getting a divorce. Do you know that?
Not only is Kim Kardashian getting a divorce / hasn't filed yet, but now there's a Jeffree Star conversation happening that Jeffree Star and Kanye have hooked up.
What?
Let your mind.
What? Oh, I missed that.
Let your mind be blown. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if anything can take away from the stress of what's going on this week, it's a good Kardashian story. And how we find out what's really happening because they don't have a show anymore.
I know. But I can't believe that they're getting a well, I can believe that they're getting a divorce. I just can't believe it's taken this long.
I'm a little surprised that they're getting a divorce, but I mean, I don't know the inner workings. And there's a lot of children, and
there's a lot of children.
He's,
He's crazy.
He's interesting. We try our hardest not to judge, but there's some weird things that have come out of his mouth.
I know. I couldn't help it. I was watching the David Letterman with him, and the whole time I was like, shut up. No. Like, I don't believe you. You're fake. Like, the whole time.
That was a rough one.
It was rough, right?
Rough.
But and then I watched the one with Kim, and I was like, I like you. You're good. Yeah.
Are you a Kim, Khloe, or a Kourtney fan?
I'm honestly a fan of none of them, but I do love them all collectively. Like, separate, I'm like, oh, I just can't. But collectively, I love them. If I had to pick a favorite, I would say Khloe.
I think Khloe. She seems the most down to earth. But then, I don't know. They're all kind of collectively insane, so.
I know. It's good, though. I just remember I was like, the day I decided I could never watch them again, I was in the hospital after like loads of chemo, and I was just like, I can never watch this show again. Like, it's so, like, my brain was just mush, and it was like an marathon.
Oh. And I'm sure your chemo brain was like, I cannot process.
Cannot process. And like, I think I was in on like 6 hours or something like that. And it just kept going. And I was like, I will never again watch this. I couldn't.
Mentally sound decision.
Right.
For sure.
So anyway, thanks for doing this with me.
You are so welcome.
Very appreciative. This is my sister Lauren. If you would like to explain to us what your connection is to chronic illness, I would love that.
I would love to. So before you, I had no experience with chronic illness. And so it's a whole new world, really. Um, and I think that we're going to get into all the details, but I think that dealing with chronic illness is something that's so like not, um, I guess, normal for people to wrap their minds around. So it's definitely been a journey because it's I imagine very lonely for you, but it's like in a strange way very not lonely for me, but it's just something that people don't understand, I guess, when I try to explain it. People really want like a good closure. Oh, you're sick. When are you not going to be? Okay, thanks. Like, I think
Right.
there's this like need to close the loop and feel like, oh my goodness, you're sick. And the fact that there's no answer there, it's really it's difficult to explain. And it's also I feel like I end up kind of helping people through the emotion of the fact that I don't have an answer. You know,
Totally.
people kind of don't know how to respond when they ask about you and they say like, how's your sister? And I say like she's good. She's got a great treatment plan. She's doing well. She does still have cancer. And they don't hear the word remission, and then it's kind of this like, okay, well, that sounds good.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. They literally just are like waiting for me to be like, and I'm in remission. Like they're always like, so you're better? Question mark. And I'm like, I guess the better than I was before. Like I'm also like question mark. Like,
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately in our society, there's a narrative and it doesn't necessarily fit with the normal, like, I had cancer, I went through something, now I don't. And so, I think this podcast is a beautiful thing to at least extend some education and help even provide resources. Like, if you don't have a lot of people that are chronically ill around you or you don't have those kind of resources, it's probably like, what's wrong with me? I
yeah.
I'm extrapolating. I don't know like how you feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like that a lot because I'm younger than the person. Like for me specifically, cancer usually tends to be with older people. So like when I got cancer when I was 22, I was like, I'm so disconnected from anyone else that's 22. Like right now, I felt like I just couldn't like communicate with my friends that were going through like job searches and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm just in bed. Like,
Yeah.
that's all I'm doing. So, like, it was really hard for me to connect with one, having cancer. And then two, like, when I did start to find people that had like other cancers, they would all start to like get better. And I was like, that's so cool. I would love that as well. But it just like didn't happen. And, I am now finding that I have a chronic illness and it wasn't really like addressed to me in any sort of way. It was just sort of like, you're sick, you're sick, you're sick. And then it goes on for so long where you're like, okay, so this is continuing to happen.
Right, exactly. I think the goal obviously is for you to be as healthy as possible. And, I would love to see that this isn't, a part of your life forever, but at least for now it is, and I think that you've done a lot with it in a good
Yeah.
way.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. Yeah, it's weird. It's a strange, like, I don't know what I was waiting for. Like, was I waiting for a doctor? Oh, that's beautiful.
That's very bright.
It's fine. It's fine.
Trying to just light my face up here.
It's a good one. That's a good light.
Hmm.
I was like waiting for a doctor to just be like, and now you're chronically ill. But I never really got that. It was just sort of like, well, we're gonna stay on this and you can stay on it forever. And I was like, okay. That's a long time. Forever is kind of forever.
I mean, you have to set the bounds within your own mind too, because there's there's choices you can make to not be in this space, but they're extremely difficult, right? So,
Right.
I think e the societal easy answer is we'll just go through that thing and then not have cancer. But it's like my experience with even just not chronic illness, but with cancer was so minimal until, you got sick. And then I realized, yes, it's very bad, but there's so many different varieties and there's so many different treatments.
Right. So let's see. After going through everything with me, do you feel differently when you're like looking at other people that have like a chronic illness or a disability and like do you like view them in any different way or the same way that you may have viewed them before?
I think that I don't necessarily view them differently, but I think my perspective on what people are going through has been more heightened in a way. So, you see people every single day, and I've always had the idea and know that everyone's going through something, right? But I think you expect someone that's ill to look a certain way. And I think, unfortunately, there's really not a lot of media or movies or TV representation of someone that's chronically ill. So your image of cancer is very much like you're laying in a bed and you're staying there and you're just on chemo and then, you make it, right?
Right.
Or whatever happens. But there's really not a good representation of someone that is chronically ill that is kind of living their life. And so, I think for me, I've always known that those individuals are out there, but there's so many people that are just, living with something that it doesn't show, right? It's not a visual something that they're carrying. So I think for me, it's just more of a realization that it's more prevalent, but maybe we don't talk about it.
Absolutely. The amount of people that came out of like the woodworks when I started like being more open about being sick, like people from all over, like, oh, I have this heart condition. I've never told anyone, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, lady, first of all, you're working like 60 hours. Please go home. And like, second of all, you're right. Like, no one talks about it because it's this stigma that if you're sick, you can't do certain things, which granted is true in very many situations. But if a person's showing up every day and doing their job, it's like, I don't know. It's tough too because you know, everyone is going through something, but they're the ones that have to be able to like draw the line. And a lot of people don't want to draw that line.
I agree. So I was thinking about this literally today, how like in the past when I was earlier in my career, I worked a stupid amount of hours that I kind of just thought like we're all in this together kind of thing. And I took the mentality of, well, we're all a team and someone's going to tell me that I'm working too hard or I'm going to, you know, I need to take vacation, something like that. And it didn't come. And unfortunately, what happened, it wasn't a great environment, but in general, I think I recognize that no one's going to come and tell you that you need to protect and take care of your mental health. And I
Hmm.
think mental health is such an important part of everyone's life, right? And it needs to be. But I also think that, especially when I'm for you, right? If you're put in a situation where you realize now I'm chronically ill, how much more important is your mental health that
Yeah.
you're with?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that too for you, it's like you being a manager of other people and like having this experience of knowing like what people may or may not be going through. Like, do you feel that it's sort of helped you in like being more sympathetic to people's like working environments?
Totally. I feel like for me as a people manager, it's number one, your job is obviously to deliver whatever it is that you need to do. But I think whether you manage people or not, empathy is so important. And I think that it's super easy um, from just like a day-to-day business to forget that there are people, especially now that we're virtual, right? We're all talking to screens and we're not necessarily interacting with people. I think sometimes that, empathy is such a muscle that we need to flex more. And I really try, obviously empathy is not something that's everyone possesses or whatever, but I at least try to take that into consideration when, I know people have moved weddings or, um, they're dealing with parents that are far away or they're dealing with, a number of other things, right? And I find that that personal interaction and at least acknowledgement of their situation makes them that much more likely to want to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And want to be more open with you too. Like that's such an important piece of like management or just like relationship building.
Totally.
Yeah,
No,
me
I
too.
think I think that I just lost my point. Sorry.
That's all right. You're in good company here. Can you remember your favorite hospital story?
I was hoping you'd ask me this. I have two.
Yeah.
I have a lot, but not that everyone loves hospital stories, but um, I at the time when you were sick, just for those listening, I lived in Connecticut and you were in New York, and so I was kind of driving back and forth um, to come visit slash stay in the hospital room with you when I could or whatever. And I came down and you'd been through one stem cell transplant and you were really through your second one. I want to say you were maybe a couple weeks out from being totally done. So you were somewhat better. And I didn't know what a stem cell transplant was until you got the first one. And then they very much were insistent on a second one. And I remember that you saw the doctor came in to see you and he gave you kind of his 3-minute assessment.
Yeah.
That being said, as a subset of this story, doctors out there, let's work on the bedside manner. Let's
Please.
let's get it tied up, wrap it
With
up
a
in a bow.
bow.
Yeah,
Come
let's
on.
work on that because we're telling people something that's going to happen in their lives. And I know you're busy, but just you
Spend
just
more than 3 seconds. That'd be
spent more than
great.
3 seconds. Okay. So the doctor came in, and you were, a stem cell transplant is traumatic, and it's a total rebirth in the
Yeah.
truest. And so you were just through it, and he looked at you for I don't know, I do want to say like 3 minutes, and he said we really should do another stem cell transplant.
Oh my God.
And I think, for me, it was so much to take in because here's this doctor. He's got all the degrees in the universe, and he's telling you, I think you need to go through this again. And I'm not saying that you had a lightning moment or I had a lightning moment, but what I'll say is following that, right? You decided that doesn't fit for me and that's not something I want to go do. And the reason it's my favorite is because it's there's no classic path, and I think it gives me right perspective that there's not one treatment. And it was good to see that you were like weighing it out, and I sat with you and we kind of like talked through like second opinions and blah blah blah. But it was good to see that like it's not this is it period the end. You really were able to like say no, that doesn't work for me, and like this is something else that I want. And frankly, to just throw another stem cell for you, right? This is your story, but to throw another stem cell transplant at you when you're not even done with the second one felt like we were running out of ideas.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have all the degrees. I'm not a doctor, so like that's on them, but it felt like you took the steps to be like, you know what, like I'm going to finish this and I'm going to like think it through.
Totally. Well, so a stem cell, let's just say that a stem cell transplant is one of the worst things that can ever a person can go through. I don't know about ever, but it was a really shitty process. You basically like it sounds not that bad. Like you get your blood taken out And it's your
I'm
stem
sorry.
cells are
We're starting with I get my blood taken out, and this is not bad. Okay, no, continue by all
yeah.
means. Sure.
It's so strange. Yeah, I know. I do that a lot. I'm just like, it's not a big deal. They just put a pipe in your neck and then it's done.
Yeah, that's very simple.
They do have to do that. That was a bad part. That sucked. So you get your blood drawn and the stem cells are in your blood. So it comes out of you and they're like, "Wow, these are all your stem cells. Great job." And I'm like, "I just laid here." And so they collect all those. And then they put you through a whole bunch of really intensive chemo for like a week or 2 weeks. I forget how long. Or maybe it was just 3 days. I don't know. It's very blurry. So you get a set of chemo, and it brings all your platelets down to 0. So you have no white blood cells, and you're basically just wiped clean. And then after that, they put back in the blood and the stem cells that they collected from you. And those stem cells are supposed to regenerate and make your immune system brand new. So you're reborn into this beautiful body of newness. And it's supposed to cure you. They're supposed to regenerate healthy enough cells that they're all going to forget the the tumor regeneration that they were doing in there and restart fresh. So after going through that once, I was pretty depleted. My whole body was. And then the second time I went through it, it was a nightmare. And so after the first, those two going through and I was still positive for um, lymphoma after both of those. So there was like really like no sort of difference, I felt like, between the two. Like maybe like one or two like things shrunk. But it was
The
like
the thing you got out of it was nowhere near what you had to put into it to get to that space. So,
exactly.
and the
And
other side of it is that you had to use you for the two, right? You used your own stem cells, but now the third one, this like elusive third one, you can no longer use your own cells. So now you're dealing with this donor stem cell
right.
that, you kind of have to cross your fingers and hope that there's not some sort of insane rejection or anything like that. And obviously they'd monitor and all that fun stuff. But it's a really scary thing for someone to 3 minutes into a conversation with you say like, okay, we're going to go do that.
Right.
Like,
Right. Probably because they knew that if I like waited, that I would just run for the hills, which is exactly what I did.
that's what you did. Yeah,
Like,
that's exactly what you did.
I'm not doing that again. You're high. Like, there's no way.
And
Uh,
then my other favorite story is that because we're strange people, I don't know, but we decorated your hospital room for Halloween and people just thought that was the cutest. Like when the nurses came in to draw your blood or give you medicine, we had like a little candy bowl and we're like, trick or treat.
they
I just
loved
think you
that.
have to like find joy in whatever your situation is. And if it's as stupid as putting a bowl of candy out, wearing masks,
There you
like
go.
there you go.
Yeah,
Joy.
that was a lot of fun. I
You know,
loved having sushi with you low key in the hospital room whenever
100% not supposed to have that.
100%.
100% snuck it in. Sorry. Actually,
Like,
wasn't it Thai food or no, it was sushi?
was it? Or no, I think it was just Thai food. You're right, you're right. I was just dreaming of sushi and you're like, you can't do that.
Yeah, I remember like I had to like wash because you were neutropenic. So I was like, I went out and I bought you apple slices and then I washed it with like medical soap to make sure it was like okay because they were like, she can't have apples. And you started crying and you were like, oh, I want this apple. And I was like, fuck it, we are getting this girl an apple. Mind you, like years later, someone told me, I don't know how they knew this, maybe they worked in the industry, but they were like, yeah, you definitely shouldn't have gone pre-cut apple. Like that's probably the worst thing you could have done. Definitely should have gone like with a regular apple. And I was like, but it was so simple. It was right there and I washed it. I was like, okay, well, I'm glad your sister's still with us.
Oh
Thanks.
man, it's rough. It's rough out there, especially when like you're told that you can't have something. You're like, well, that's the only thing I want now.
Obviously, I'm having that.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
find that there was any aversion to food afterwards, because I know they were very, like, for the amount of things you were going through, they were hyper focused on the fact that if you ate something when you were on chemo, you were never going to eat it again. And I was like, she's going to have her whole body redone, but you want to make sure she can eat egg rolls after this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It will taste different. And I was like, what? I honestly haven't noticed. I've liked different things. Like I started liking beets after
Sorry.
you didn't get there. It's all
No,
right. It's gonna,
sorry. It's not going to happen for me.
I just, they're lovely. No, okay. I get it. They do taste like dirt at first. And that's exactly what I thought before. And then after I had chemo, I was like, I love beets. They're great.
It's a failure for me. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just go through a whole bunch of chemo and then maybe it'll happen. I'm just kidding. Please don't ever do that. Um, but no fun taste or anything. My hair sort of stayed the same, which I was like, meh, because I had it short for so long. I was wondering if it was going to grow out and be like, I don't know, different, but it's pretty much the same. Um, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really experience any of that
I mean,
fun
everyone's
stuff.
experience is different, right? So
Yeah.
you're kind of just like rediscovering everything once you go through something like that.
Yeah, and it's hard for I don't know how doctors do it because it is a science, but it's also like they have no idea like what someone's body is going to react to a certain drug, you know. They never know how you're going to react. It's just like a lot of people reacted this way, so you might. Like this might work for you. But like at the end of the day, they're just grabbing at straws, I feel like. I mean, with a very educated
Right.
background and
I
like
mean, even the
years of schooling.
I do think that one of the things that shocked me when I really got into this whole you have cancer thing, what do we do? Is I kind of thought, okay, like here's what we're gonna do, right? I'm a pragmatic person. Okay, what are we gonna do? How long is it gonna take? Like what all like let's list it. And the thing that shocked me honestly the most when you first got sick was it's really just like it's a guess. There's a
Yeah.
million different medicines and treatments and ways that you
Hmm.
can go about it. And I kind of thought like, well, they're going to look at her, they're going to look at her scans, and they're just going to propose the best method. And I think I was most surprised when we tried chemo, ABVD, and then you tried ice, which is another kind of chemo, and it just kind of felt like I'm just going to keep picking through my arsenal. A very educated, very well stocked arsenal with like a lot of education behind that choice. But it really is not just a straight silver bullet to get to the end. And that's,
Yeah.
I think we live in this in between space.
Right. And I think that it's so important for people that are newly diagnosed to like really understand, I mean, try to understand, or maybe like I felt like you did a really great job in like helping me understand what it was that ABVD was going to be doing. Because at the time, like I could not focus on literally anything in my life. So I was just like every time I tried to think of anything else, I was just like, Dana, you have cancer. And I was like, ah, so that I couldn't like think of anything else. So it was so helpful that you were like really like vocal in looking at what this drug was that like we were going to be going through and what it was that it would be doing and like the other drugs that were out there, and I just thought that that was really helpful because there are so many options, you know.
I think that, um, you know, obviously in a situation where you're sick, you need your friends and your family around you. And I think they have to be the advocates that you know you need. So certainly there are people that maybe want to just ask all the questions, but especially when you're going through something like this, it's always helpful to have someone by your side. And God bless Helen, your friend, came in one day and you know I think I was working from your hospital room, so I was like kind of working slash you were there, and Helen walked in and was like, all right, I've printed like a
Yeah.
medical binder of like encyclopedia, like all the things related to cancer. She's like, we're gonna read all of the treatments. And I'm reading these like medical documents of like what each one is. I couldn't get through all of it. I'm really sorry. Like, it's just not my forte. But I was like, I'm going to go back to work and we're going to talk to the doctor when he gets in. I can't read this. But I think, like, you have to just have people be there for you, because there's the other thing that's so crazy is that they're really asking you, and you are obviously of age to make your own decisions, but they're asking you to make some of these decisions when your brain is just chemoed out, and
Yeah.
you're trying to make these very important decisions for how you're going to navigate this illness. And they're like, what do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was
Like,
most shocked when he asked, like, "So, is that okay?" I was like, "You're asking me?" Like, you tell me.
think,
Put the stuff in me that's gonna change it.
yeah,
Make it
make it
change.
different. Make this different.
Make this different. Enough with these questions.
Yeah, right. Like, I just think having people around you that can advocate for you is super important.
Oh
So
my gosh, so
that's
important.
what I try to do.
You do. You absolutely do. Every time I have like a doctor's meeting that's somewhat like you need to decide something, I'm like, Lauren, what are we doing here? Because it is.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
so hard to like, yeah. You gotta just bounce off like all these different treatment options and stuff like that.
Because the
Because
news you get is so rattling. Like, I know when I get bad news, I have to like let it reverberate around in my mind. Or if I have some big thing I need to think about, I don't just, the way I think, and everyone's different, but it kind of needs to roll around in my mind. And I'm not someone that can just like answer. And you only get 15 minutes with these doctors. So it's really helpful to have someone removed from it that can like let you process it, but then just like honestly, ask a dumb question. Like, the thing
yeah.
that I think, you know, I have to be humbled, and everyone in those rooms has to be humbled. Like, I don't even know half of this stuff. So, like, in lieu of, I mean, obviously, we're not going to go from like square one, but I'm happy to go and say, like, I am so sorry. I understand you asked a question about X. We need to go back to A. And kind of help me here with like, what is it that we're like, I don't know. I think they're
Yeah.
there. They have to be able to take the science and the treatment options, and, it's bedside manner a little bit, but how do you translate that into something that, allows this person and their family to make the right decision?
Right. Yeah. No, it's so important. So, we sort of already talked about how you talk to people about my illness. I think that's fine.
I think, you know, to that point, we talked a lot about it, but I think the way I used to respond was I would try to almost console them. And now I kind of just let it sit, because everyone has to go through their own process, and there's not a beautiful bow at the end all the time, right? And I think that your life is beautiful as it is. And I think that even though obviously I'd love for you to be in remission and not have cancer, it's something that you've made incredibly positive in your life. And I think also when things didn't work for you, like if you modeled for some period of time, because it was very empowering and you felt like it was, breaking down barriers, and you were in some major stuff, which was awesome. And I remember people were really championing that and loving that story, and I loved it too, completely. Um, but then what I really appreciated is that, everyone would always ask about, oh, Dayna's modeling. I saw her, this and milk ads and all this stuff. But then it just didn't feed you anymore. Like, it didn't fulfill you in a way that was healthy, because it just turned into something that didn't fit for you anymore. And you were able to move past it. And, again, people were kind of waiting for the, what do you, like, what do you mean she's not doing that anymore? Because she's beautiful. And I was like, totally. I so I think I used to try to console people through that, and now it's just like I let them sit with it. Like, There's
Yeah.
not the perfect ending, so.
Yeah. And exactly, like you shouldn't be the one like trying to comfort them in this time that like you're trying to explain to them what's going on in your life. And I think that a lot of people, so much of like conversation, I feel like bad conversation just ends up you comforting this other person in both situations. Like you're telling them a story and like you're still comforting them, and then they're telling you a story and then you're still comforting them, and you're like, all right, this is not a conversation. This is just a sad story for you. Hey, Jeff, what'd you get?
This is my planner. It's
I'm so jealous. I didn't get my planner yet.
and the planner,
So
speaking for
jealous.
myself in logistics, I mean, I use it a lot actually for not going anywhere, but I honestly feel like sometimes I'm filling in stuff and I'm like, why I'm not going anywhere. At
Yep.
some point this year, we will be going somewhere though. So
Yeah, you're planning on something?
I think, and this is a larger, not mantra per se, but I guess mantra. I feel that joy comes from always having something to look forward to. It doesn't necessarily have to be big. Even just like this phone call I looked forward to, but always having something to look forward to. And for me, travel is something I look forward to. And so I don't know what that looks like this year, but we're going to be traveling.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if it's just like a day trip. Eddie and I planned a trip to Vermont. Yes.
Cheese, craft beer,
Maple syrup.
maple syrup. Goodbye.
Yeah, we
Goodbye.
did. End of February too. So like that, like I'm done with winter month. Like when is it over time? Like,
January, February, March, like I could write those months off, honestly. Christmas is
right?
gone. It's over.
Honestly, when I emailed you on Tuesday, I was like, it feels like it's been a month since I've seen Lauren
Haven't I not seen you in like 6 weeks?
crawling.
It's like, and then I thought like, oh, like because we saw each other, like I definitely don't have COVID. And I was like, wait, I think it's been less than 2 weeks, I
I
think.
know. I know. It's so crazy. Yeah, I don't really want to go get tested, but I feel like I should just to like, I don't know, because I usually get tested every 2 weeks because I'm a psychopath. But
I mean, at
I,
least you have access to testing.
yeah, dude, what? It's just so messed up. I did have to like go through around Thanksgiving. I was having that trouble getting a appointment around Thanksgiving. I couldn't get one. And I was like signing up for like a drive-through at like Walgreens or something, and I was like, I'll do it. I've never seen anyone doing this around me
That's
at
what
a
I did.
Walgreens.
It
You did
worked.
it? That's
hmm
cool.
I was
I
going to
haven't
pay
seen.
$140 for an at-home test because I number one, I actually didn't feel very well, and I was freaked out. Number two, like, when you don't feel well and you're in the middle of a pandemic, your brain immediately goes to like, oh my God.
Yeah, the worst thing.
With like your chronic illness, do you feel like when you get, well, I know you don't you have such a high intensity for pain and you have such like a minimalist attitude when something happens and your doctors have always told you like, like you shouldn't get out of breath walking upstairs and you're like, I just stop and then I'll just finish.
Yeah. I do have stuff that feels uncomfortable or like I have a pain or something like that, and I have to really focus my mind on like not freaking out about it every single time it happens because it happens pretty constantly. But what I have to make sure is that, okay, I feel this. How long did it last for? And is it reoccurring? Like, does it happen multiple times? When does it happen? Are you sitting? Are you standing when this happens? Are you running up the stairs? Like, what are you doing right now? And then if it continues to happen at least for a week, then I'll bring it up to my doctors because for a while, like every time I felt something, I was like, so I have this thing and it's itchy and I'm not sure. And they're like, did you change lotions? I'm like, I had 3 different lotions on, but I'm not sure why I'm itchy. And they're like,
All of them had fiberglass in it and I don't know what's happening.
you're wearing wool. What's
Yeah, you're wearing wool and it's hot. Oh, okay.
Okay, are you sure? They're like, "We just did a scan yesterday, you're fine." Like, "But itchy." Yeah, so it can be, like, really a roller coaster, and I, like, can't wait to start getting, talking to other people about with chronic illness and, like, what their symptoms are and, like, how they feel in their bodies and, like, how they react to their symptoms because flare-ups I know happen in, like, so many different diseases, and it's like, how do you manage those and how do you not spiral out of control when they may or may not be something, you know? It's
Yeah.
so tough to tell because you wanna just, like, run to the hospital and be like, "Hi, I'm sick now," and then but you also don't. You're like, "I hate going to the hospital. I don't wanna go again."
I mean, when you first got sick, you hated needles, and now you're like a fucking champ. Sorry, I don't know if we swear on this, but
Yeah.
it's 5 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah. I know, and you're only drinking seltzer. You're doing great.
Seltzer, kids. It's only
Seltzer
seltzer.
forever. So after all of our collective 8 years almost. Can you believe that? Almost 8 years of dealing with this?
I still remember to this day exactly where I was when you called me. So,
It's so crazy.
yeah.
After dealing with all of that, do you find that you're still positive about chronic illness in general and the outcomes of dealing with that?
I think that similar to what I had said earlier about people kind of wanting to put a bow on it, I was very much of the mindset that, like, this is something that you're going to deal with. It's going to be over. And then, everyone's kind of started their quote unquote, like the rat race, their life, right? Gotten the career, done the grunt work, moved up to the next position, etc. And, for me, it took a really long time to think like, maybe that's just not your path, right? And I ascribed one set path because that's just kind of how I thought about it, right? Everyone goes to school. I say everyone, but like, I mean, just like the path that I had thought that you were on. You went to school, you had a job, you were gonna, move up in that position and then go from there. And I thought, okay, well, cancer's a roadblock and we're gonna work through it and it's gonna be fine and then we're gonna get past it and we're gonna be done. And it just never happened that way. So I find a lot of inspiration from your story in general and how you've managed it. But I also think that I'm personally, I'm in a place where, I mean, obviously, the most important thing is that you're happy. And I think you've also come to a place where it's okay that you're not going to like follow that standard path that a lot of your friends are on or that maybe you see happening around you. And I think, it took a little while for you to realize that that's not for you, but I think you've grown into this um, really positive force and you're going to do it your own way. And so for me, I'm very much still positive about how you're going to make the most out of the situation, circa a podcast. And I just have a lot of hope for you in your future, and I think you're gonna make your own way. The one thing I will say is not that anyone of, well, maybe someone of importance will listen to this at some point, but I think our healthcare system in this country needs to needs a little bit of an overhaul. But in
Needs to
general,
wake up.
I think that corporate America really wants the story to be, I was sick, I got better, I'm here, I'm back. And chronic illness is something that people are dealing with, and you know, no one in this country, no one in any country should ever feel like they're going to lose their job because they have to take care of themselves.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that you had to grapple with a little bit. And it's something that people grapple with all the time. And certainly there are positions where you have health care or you can take time off. But there are other people that work in positions that don't necessarily have that luxury. And so I just find it like incredibly bizarre that we would ask people who are in a situation where they do need to be treated on a more regular basis to make that choice between having an income and a job or taking care of yourself. So
Right.
that's my 30-second rant. we're not going to go too deep into the healthcare bubble, because I think we could go way deep, like why we're spending the amount of money we're spending in our healthcare system. But again,
Yeah.
I am to bring it all back. I am incredibly proud of you, and I know that you're going to make the most of whatever you put your mind to. And I am always here as your cheerleader to root you on.
I so appreciate that. And I so appreciate you and everything that you've done for me within the last 8 to 30 years. So,
Approximately between 8 and 30 years.
yeah,
Somewhere in there.
somewhere in there. But
Would
every
like
day
to
I'm
see my
thankful.
sweatshirts back.
Yeah, right.
I feel like I had a sweatshirt in high school that you took that was like my graduating class, and I
Most
never
definitely.
really had. So we're fine, but like
Yeah.
I just kind of would like that back.
Just saying, you're never getting it back. Class of 04.
Woo!
Alrighty then. There we go. That is the first episode of Still Positive. Thank you so much for listening in, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. And I hope that you come back for next week's episode. I talked to a very lovely lady about her life living with chronic migraines, and it is such a great episode. I'm so excited for you to hear it. So come back next week, and that's it. Take care. Stay sick.